Good evening, everyone here at the service as well as the live stream. This is Pat McMorrow. I'm Tim's nephew, so I'm just going to kick things off here. So first off, acknowledge that due to the constraints of COVID, there are many who wish to be here, but cannot be in the present circumstances. In particular, I wanted to highlight Tim's siblings. So both sister and my aunt, our aunt Mary, his brother David, my father, our father, his brother Greg, also our uncle, and sister Judy, also our aunt, who are all have been checking in on chat as well, and the email that they are watching. And thank you for being here with us and powering through the COVID constraints. Also acknowledge, and Ann wanted me to highlight that once we get through the other side of the current environment, certainly going to do justice again to Tim with a broader and appropriately, so we call it Cagney-sized, Cagney cousin-sized bash. That means big. That means out of control, and plenty of inappropriate jokes and comments from Jim Northam, who likely is hearing that comment as well on a one-way feed, and we will look forward to that. So I'll also lead us off, just a couple thoughts on Tim, a number of which have crystallized even just today, and have the opportunity to visit with folks that at times remembered meeting me and my siblings and cousins when we were young, but brought back memories to me because obviously I was young in those instances, so brought back some fresh perspective. So a couple of reflections just from my perspective on Tim and what he brought to me personally, I think brought to friends and family. First off, Tim was not exactly subtle in his support for, his devotion to, principally the University of Notre Dame and in their sports programs, as well as our local Detroit sporting programs here. But just to focus on that connection to Notre Dame for a moment, I had a couple of people approach me as they were coming through today, as we were just talking, and they had actually rummaged out of their respective closets or trunks the Notre Dame apparel that Tim had either bought for them or probably insisted, or that he guilted them into buying when taking them to Notre Dame football games down in South Bend, or beating them on the golf course as well. But certainly, from my perspective, there was a passion that Tim exhibited for Notre Dame, expressed via commonly support for the football program and all the emotional highs and lows that includes, but also that there was I think underpinning that's a reflection of Tim's passion for things other than himself, his passion for involvement in community, his kind of cultural inheritance to a certain extent, I think, from both the McMorrows and the Cagneys in terms of growing up. And you can see some through lines in the pictures that have been put up. You can see some through lines in the stories that have been told all the way back to when he was a child in the 1950s, with quite literally some pictures of his father and relatives of that generation, both decked out in Notre Dame apparel in terms of kind of the more obvious artifacts, as well as you can see it, I think, even in the kind of cultural, the interests of Tim in both history and then the transition over to, I think, probably Tim's storytelling ability and joke-telling ability was one of the other reflections that really came out this week. And there were times, particularly when I was young, where I didn't quite understand all of Tim's jokes. I think that was a failing on the audience rather than a failing on the deliverer, but also reflective of the breadth and depth of Tim's interests across both a number of different topics. Obviously loved the law, and I would also say loved history, and that was reflected in the stories that he told. And I fondly remember, and I've heard this echoed several times, certainly as I've been able to talk to my sister today, that we fondly remember Tim and Ann being, in a sense, almost like that second set of parents in terms of our relationship with them, and especially, and some of this is shaped by the age that we are, but our grandfather died in the late 1980s, and we really have limited memory of him. Whereas our grandma died in 2005, so we have a much more mature memory, I think, at our level of that across the cousins of our grandma. And the context that I often find myself remembering Tim is coming over to our house for what often was a larger gathering, often on Saturdays or Sundays, with his mother, our grandmother, as she was in the last years of her life as well, and the varied interests and the varied conversations and the varied topics that would come out on the more humorous side, as far as, I forget what it was called, but Tim's excellence in not just Trivial Pursuit and not just Scrabble, but also the obscure, like, Catholic Trivial Pursuit game that somehow there was a market for in the mid to late 1990s, and I forget what it was called. And Cataschic, well, there we go. We're able to complete that memory now. It is. Well, I imagine Pope Francis has rendered half the truths in there probably false, but that's a separate conversation. Both the fond memories that brought forward about the wide and varied interests, the kind of care and the deep engagement that Tim brought, I think, particularly for those of us at the younger generation, where he was interested and engaged with whatever we were individually interested and engaged with, which was obviously varied across all the cousins, and certainly the fond memories there. And then I'll just close out by also saw, I think, an example of that even today, where one of the younger children on the Burton side, Waylon, if I'm getting that correct, who's 5 years old, and was here and had spent some time with Tim in Tim's the last year, several years of Tim's life, to include as Tim got sick, and even in the last few months and weeks, and the comments that and the reflections from that 5-year-old, I would say, stood as a testament to that thread across Tim's life and our living memory of him in terms of his interest in and engagement towards all, and his ability to reach in and have an impact at both, kind of speaking from a family perspective, that familiar perspective down to the younger generation, and certainly I think has been reflected in the professional testimonials that have been forthcoming, was very strong within the legal field and his professional field as well. But I just wanted to offer his reflections from the family perspective. So with that, I think I'll transition over to my sister, Tim's niece, Kathleen.
Patrick, it's going to be hard to follow you because you have such a wonderful way with words. But I would just like to speak or to acknowledge all of the cousins, both on the McMorrow side, but also on the Burns side. There's so many of our generation. And I know that they would all love to be here to celebrate Uncle Tim's life. But we know that they're reflecting fondly on him, and that they're with their families, and that they're telling their own stories right now to their children. I know that my oldest, Kate, is 11, and she had the great pleasure of knowing Uncle Tim for at least, those very formative years of her life. And she was very sad when I told her that she couldn't come here today because she's in Texas, she's in school. COVID has made this whole world a little bit crazy right now. But I know that she's home, and she's thinking about all of those family dinners that she's had with Uncle Tim, with my parents, with Aunt Ann. And that was just the beauty of Uncle Tim, right? That he was there and he brought such a passion and a wisdom to every family dinner. And he was just this wonderful person. And he was able to talk with you about anything. And he knew so much about every subject. It was always this incredible thing that you would sit and you would listen to Uncle Tim talk about the most obscure subjects. And I don't think I'm the only one who would say that I didn't have much to offer when conversing with him about certain subjects. You know, I was more of the head nodder, be like, yes, I agree, because he would just have so much knowledge. But that was just a wonderful thing to be a part of. And I will always cherish all of those memories that we had at 2431 Russet Drive when you would come down and my grandmother would be there. And I'm so happy that my children were able to experience that. And moving from that to some of the more specific memories I have of Uncle Tim, for sure his joke telling is one of them. Like Patrick, when I was younger and he would tell a joke, and I remember Uncle Tim would say, "Oh, Kathleen, you know, you have to cover your ears because it's going to be inappropriate." And I think I wrote this in the life story memories. Like, I remember thinking there's no reason for that because I have no idea what you're talking about right now because your jokes are so, they were so wonderfully impressive, and it was difficult to follow. But luckily I grew out of that as I grew older. And of course, I remember Uncle Tim and Ann, you came to all of my performances, piano recitals. You came to see me in the plays that I was in high school. And I don't think you missed any of that. You came to my college, I think it was like an honors award ceremony, and you were right there and you were watching. And that was so wonderful. And I will always cherish all of those memories. And I know that all of the cousins of our generation, we all share those memories. And that they're all sharing them with their own families right now as they're watching. So I just wanted to close by saying that. And am I passing it off to Aunt Ann? Let me put on my mask.
Yep. Since this is about Tim, I took it upon myself that I was going to bring a limerick. And of course, I forgot it. So there will be no limericks here. And that is sad because most limericks are somewhat less than tasteful, maybe the best way to describe them. And we will have lots and lots and lots of time for those when we have this once upon a time picnic, when COVID is no longer here to screw up our lives. And God bless all those people who are currently fighting it. We hope for their recovery and we hope it's speedy. And we sure as stars don't want anybody else to get it. And I can't even begin to give you memories of Tim. Except to say that he was kind, generous, funny, had a good sense of humor, and he was humble. And I wish I was more like him, but I'm not. And he stuck with me. Apparently it wasn't too bad. He stayed a long time. I've lost my second hard drive. Okay, we'll get on. And I'm not going to stand up here and blather and cry and have my nose run in front of everyone. So, Kim, would you like to say something?
Just the best kind of man. And to have someone like Tim on your side, to have someone like Tim have a good opinion of you, to support you and believe in you, means so much. Especially this year has been hard on everyone, even without the losses that we're facing now. And to hear things that Tim thought about me, good things, at times when I need them the most, has meant the world to me. In terms of memories, from the prosecutor's office, he is and remains one of a kind. He was a bright blue Democrat in a sea of red in our office, and somehow managed to pack the Appellate division with blue while he was there. Blue, Democrat, we do care about the law, and we do care about crime, and he was the best kind. He was the integrity, and we have lots of attorneys that have a lot of integrity. I don't mean that, but he was the epitome of that. If he didn't think something was right, he would say so and stand up and say so and repeat it until someone listened to him. He always looked for the good in people. As you mentioned, he knew so much about every single subject. If someone came in with a question for him, they would leave with the answer, but then also leave with the history behind how that answer was developed, and usually some added trivia that they might use at a later time. He has taught so many of our officers in this community, of our attorneys in this community. He provided updates continually to both our law enforcement and our legal community. We've had judges who would pick up a phone and call and ask a question and have a defense attorney in their office, and the defense bar would also look to Tim and say, oh yeah, what he says is correct, because they knew not only did he know the law, he was going to be fair in whatever he was saying. Around the office, I shared an office wall with Tim, and was told many times by Tim that he inherited the office from a prosecutor I didn't know personally named Zeke, who had retired, and they had put extra soundproofing in this office because of how loud this other attorney was. He kept telling me that. I still don't believe it, because occasionally, beyond the two-finger or three-finger typing that you would hear coming from next door, something would not go right, and you would hear oh, for crying out loud, or you would hear a good grief, or any number of explanations coming from his office. I don't know how loud they would be without that extra soundproofing. He debated sports in the office quite a bit. He knew an incredible amount of stats from baseball. He and Gary Moore would start talking about baseball, and you would just back away slowly and just go as far away as you possibly could, because they would continually talk about that. He was the best kind of human, and the best kind of man: integrity, intelligence, empathy. And our office, one of our attorneys who never worked with Tim said just this evening, I feel like he really set the tone for the office. And this is someone who has not been in the office with him. But it's true. He set that kind of tone where you could have disagreements and you'd have arguments about any number of subjects. And it was okay because you spoke truth to each other, you did it with integrity, and you left any kind of bad feelings behind. That's the type of atmosphere that we had in the office and have in the office because of Tim. I will miss him. I cherish, again, the support that he has given me. And as I've told Ann, I have no doubt that he's here, he's everywhere, he's pain-free, he's always with you, and always with all of us in our hearts. Thank you.
Well, I think all the ruffians in the back of the room want to go out and have their shot of Bushmills and have a cigar. So we will say good night for now. Goodbye, honey.